Welcome to today's Droppin' Dimes NBA playoff edition, the first one of the playoffs, and I am A, excited because basketball is in full swing, and B, I have another fellow NBA fan, a longtime friend, and all around pretty shitty human being, actually, Mr. Mark Ellis.
Yeah, pretty terrible human being. Not as terrible as a human being who would put together a compilation of some of the greatest basketball calls of all time and somehow leave off Kevin Harlan. Where is Kevin Harlan in that montage? Matt, he is a gem. He is the successor to whoever you think is the best NBA announcer from days of yore. Kevin Harlan deserves to be in your opening montage.
Kevin Harlan and Gus Johnson, both of them. Not Gus Johnson, that's the YouTuber.
I knew you were going to do this.
Anyway, they don't have the succinct Mike Breen bang, and the Marv is the classic Marv. And then if you don't like that, you don't like NBA basketball, which is from the Kings announcer, who I'd have to look up. I can't remember the man's name, but it's just three. Otherwise, it's going to be a 2-minute intro while I fit in every announcer that I love.
No, you're right. Yeah, you need the spectacular move by Michael Jordan. You need that one. And I'm sorry, I'm not buying Gus Johnson stock. Not before, not now, not ever. I cannot stand fake manufactured enthusiasm. You're the play-by-play guy. Do the play-by-play guy's job. You can get excited with a big moment. But if you're he's a brick wall. He's brick walling it for all you audio listeners out there. He's brick walling it for 48 minutes or 40 minutes when he does college basketball. And it's like, dude, at some point, your heart rate needs to come down to call the action. Cannot do it.
Okay. I like the fact that it seems as though he's getting into the game as much as the average fan is. So when it goes crazy and he goes crazy, it seems apropos as opposed to just being even keel the whole time.
He's crazy the whole time. It's like being in the cuckoo's nest. It's nonstop craziness.
This is the first anti-Gus take I've heard from a basketball fan.
But it pains me to say because the guy seems like a super nice human being. Like, I hate criticizing nice human. You and I were just making fun of another very nice human being on our text.
Yes, we were.
Yes, we were. Very nice person. Maybe not the best comic in the world, but we were making fun of him. But because they're nice people, and I'm sure he's a nice person, and I get there's an audience, but it's like Kevin Harlan calls the action and he gets excited, but then he comes back down to par. It's like, it's just Gus is just yelling at you the whole time.
Okay. All right. You're not a fan. You're not a fan. There's no swaying you. There's basically, you know exactly what he does. So if you don't buy into it, he's going to be a part of your life for quite a long time. So it sucks for you. It's not as bad as I love it. The NBA playoffs are back because people are just dragging Weber and Reggie Miller every time they're doing a call. Weber is just, it's merciless. What was that, last night or 2 nights ago? I think it was last night.
Yeah.
The fact that they don't offer all that much insight.
There's certain people in our community, and you know probably a lot of the folks I'm talking about, who, when they're doing their own shows, constantly look at the live chat. And I appreciate all the fans participating when we do shows, but it's like, I'm not glued to the live chat. Can you imagine being Weber or Reggie Miller, who I actually enjoy listening to just because I'm such a fan of their basketball prowess? I like what their insight is. Can you imagine them looking at like a live Twitter feed of their name being mentioned?
Dude, just the word. And sometimes, look, I realize the job is difficult at times because you're asked to make instant analysis, and on occasion it is rudimentary. And that's the unfortunate byproduct of it being live, and you have to do this, so quickly. But when you're good at it, you're good. And when you're bad, it's just like, man, oh man, like I don't like Mark Jackson. I think Mark Jackson is utterly terrible.
I like him and Van Gundy together. I think that's why I like them as like a odd couple, planes, trains, and automobiles kind of. But Mike Breen is really, Mike Breen does. He's the perfect play-by-play. He's the template because he's the unsung hero of that threesome, and he wrangles it all together. He puts it in a nice bow and ties everything up. Like, he is carrying on the legacy of somebody like an Al Michaels, who could get thrown with Frank Gifford, or you can get thrown with Dennis Miller and Eric Dickerson and whoever else you got it. And it just doesn't matter. Doesn't phase him at all. Breen is still probably the best play-by-play guy for the NBA right now.
Yeah, I think him,
But Harlan's great
just for the straight, the bread and butter. Yeah, Harlan is great. But he's not going to get the national as often as Breen is now the go-to by and large. But, anyway, we're not here to talk about announcers. You know what I mean?
Uh-oh.
No, we're here to talk about the Viper Room. September, what was the date?
Oh, thank you, man. Talk about Mike Breen professionalism. September, it's sometime in September.
I couldn't remember. Listen, we got to the plug. You were like, I don't care when we do it. I'm making sure that we do it up top, and then we can do it on the bookend on the end. And, you get a double.
You know what, Matt? Gus Johnson would be screaming the link right now. Gus Johnson would literally be yelling.
Did you email it to me? Did you send me any information to help with this plug? No.
Gus Johnson wouldn't have needed an email. Gus Johnson would have heard Viper Room, and he would have just known Viper Room, Saturday, September 5th, 7 p.m. HTTP:// He would have gone he would have actually said the link so everybody could type it down. I'm doing a virtual stand-up show, so there's no live audience there, but it will be me and a bunch of my very funny comic friends doing a virtual stand-up show. You can get tickets. General admission starts next week, but the pre-sale is about to be birthed to the world. We're waiting on the tech team to get the link to me, and that is you buy the package, which is the link and the t-shirt. So you get a t-shirt that's like that logo, and on the back it's like I wanted to make it like a rock concert kind of t-shirt. So it's like all the instead of where the cities are, it's just the names of the other comics that are going to be on the show, and it's Mark Ellis live on Sunset Strip. So it should be pretty cool, and that's going to be on sale later on today for all my patrons, and then on Friday to the rest of the world. So very excited about finally doing and headlining a stand-up show. And just the fact that it's the Viper Room and not my apartment means the world to me, just as a performer, because we can be in our apartment and write a joke or like be in the shower and think of something funny. But you really, even if you can't get in front of people, you want to step on a stage and do it. So that's what I'm thrilled the Viper Room is giving me the opportunity of doing. One of the legacy clubs in Hollywood on the Sunset Strip.
Yeah, it should be a good time. They have, when they do stand up there, it's always an excellent show. You look at the bill and you're like, that was a good show. I hope the people realize how good a show that was.
Yeah. And now they're desperate enough to get me. So
it just took a global pandemic.
Pandemic. Get me on stage at the Viper Room. Sam Tripoli did a special there, and then a disease infiltrated the world, which I'm not sure if Sam believes it or not. But now
I'll have to ask him.
Oh, I see him. I see him all the time. Because he's got twin daughters now. He's a very funny comic. You all know Sam, and he and because he lives kind of in my neighborhood, but he lives like a mile away. But still, I'll take the dog out for a walk, and there's Sam walking his twin daughters, and it's like the guy just walks his daughters all day, which is beautiful. It's beautiful to see somebody who came, Sam, as we know him, like. When you're hanging out around the comedy clubs and you see all the comics lined up, if you were to tell Matt and I, hey, that guy is going to be the father of twin girls, you'd be like, please don't let it happen to Sam. But it did, and I think he's embracing fatherhood very well.
He is. He is stepping up to the plate, and they look like two lovely young girls, and wish him nothing but the best. But it is surreal. Of all the comics that I know that have kids, he is the anomaly within the mix. I never thought I'd
happen to any one of us, Matt. We got to take precautions. I will see you socially distant at the doctor's office, just waiting for that.
Not going to happen for me, but that's fine. That's fine. I'll be driving past. I'll see you through the glass.
Okay, well, pick me up. I'm going to need an ice pack. Thanks.
All right, so we'll go ahead and jump into some NBA action now that the unprofessional fucking plug is done. Sorry, I apologize. And what the people don't know is, as the intro was going, you adjusted the camera to make sure that sweet, sweet logo is properly perched above. So there's professionalism for you right there.
It's
the thing of beauty.
You're the play-by-play guy. I am the color commentator who's supposed to be full of themselves, okay? I'm here to remind you that I used to be great, just like Reggie Miller does, just like Chris Webber does.
All right, so let's jump in. So last night, yesterday rather, 2 number 1 seeds lost. It's the first time it's happened since 2003, and the Bucks got curb stomped by 12. The Nets went up. They won the first quarter by 10 points, and they held the lead. They held serve the entire game, and that is since 1984. A number 1 seed has only lost the opening game by double digits 3 times. 99 for the Heat, 1998 for the Jazz, 2007 for the Mavs. And the Mavs and Heat ended up losing their series. Jazz came back to win it. So of those two opening losses, so Blazers beating the Lakers, Nets beating the Bucks, pardon me, not the Nets, but the Magic beating the Bucks, which to you actually is a sign of something that could happen? So one of these two number one seeds losing.
The one that was more entertaining to me was obviously Blazers-Lakers, just because I feel like I have more skin in that game, not just because you and I both live in the Los Angeles area, so there's a lot of Laker fans around. As your viewers probably know, I'm a big Spurs fan, but since the Spurs got knocked out, I really have adopted this just Cinderella darling of a Portland Trailblazers team that is just dynamite to watch play basketball in the bubble. I still think the Blazers have a much better shot. I don't think they will. I really don't. But I'm rooting for them to upset the Lakers because I love watching them so much. I think that they have a better shot to pull off this magnificent upset than the Magic do. Just because the Magic, it did give me pause, because that was the one series. My buddy Tyler and I were betting on the games, like how long each one would go, and the only sweep I think I had was the Bucks beating the Magic. I just thought that Giannis with the headbutt last week, and just it seems like the Bucks didn't really have their chemistry in order. I just felt like he was going to step up as a team leader. Middleton was going to be ready to prove he is a reliable playoff number two, and Coach Buds was going to get them wrangled and just get them primed and locked in, like what we saw from at least the first quarter of the Clippers yesterday. Did not get that from the Bucks at all. So I do have a little bit of pause in even saying that they're going to win that series, but I still think they have a much better shot than the Lakers, because the Lakers, if you remember when the Lakers started playing in the bubble, they had that focused look. They had that, hey, we are here to win a championship. And it was physical last night, and it looked like it was the Lakers kind of style for most of the game, where there's a lot of rebounding, not many by the Blazers, and they still couldn't pull out a victory after having the lead late. So if I'm the Lakers, if I'm a fan, I'm a little nervous right now.
Yeah, I think of the two, you have the correct assessment. I mean, the Magic also beat the Raptors in game one of the opening round last year. So when the Raptors went on, does that anoint the Bucks potentially to win a championship this year? I guess only time will tell. I still think the Bucks can rattle off 4 straight if they really want to, and take that one. Whereas I agree with you. I think the Lakers ultimately will more than likely prevail, but the Blazers could make this incredibly interesting and take it if last night is evidence for those that, listen to this show. I brought it up in the past. If you go past, AD and LeBron in these matchups versus, the Blazers, pick off any two Blazers. If you want to say it's Dame and CJ, then after that, I like practically every Blazer in the matchup. I'll take Carmelo over anything the Lakers have, Nurkic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, just going down the line, picking off one after another. And last night, like the Lakers, outside of, LeBron had a 23, 17, and 16, something along those lines. He had a great game. AD thankfully went to the foul line enough to end up having a good game, but KCP went 0 for 9. Danny Green went 2 for 8 from 3-point land, I believe, or maybe it was 2 for 7 and then 2 from 8 overall. Like, he didn't have a good game. Nobody else had a good game. And therein lies the rub with the Lakers of, you have to have one of these other guys step up. Like Kuz legitimately needs to be a solid third option, because if CJ has a bad game, Carmelo can easily pick up the slack, or Nurkic or something like that. They'll get the production. So this could go 7 pretty easily. Yeah,
I might have actually been listening to your show last week. I am a fan as well. And I think you made the point that KCP, who the hell knows what he's going to do in the playoffs, but with Kuzma, that the Lakers, particularly LeBron and AD, are going to have to look to that guy to be clutch and win a couple games for them and step up and be a great presence for at least a game or two every series. And we saw him hit that game-winning shot. I thought it was a brilliant coaching strategy by Vogel to draw a last-second shot for Kuzma, because it was regular season. Who cares if he misses it? But he made it, and I thought that was going to be a big boon to his confidence. I think it still will be. I have no worry from my history cheering for Danny Green. I don't think he's going to be 2 for 7 or 2 for 8 every game. I think he's going to come back and have a strong rebound game, as he usually does in the playoffs. But I think that the rebounding aspect gives me so much hesitation with the Blazers because, Matt, they're working and they still are not able to get rebounds. And I love what Nurkic is doing on the offensive end. He's a nice defensive disruptor, but the Blazers looked exhausted last night. And it might have been Weber that made a note of it, but they were dragging ass in the fourth quarter. And then Dame hits that deep logo three, and they wake back up. But I don't know that they're going to be able to do that, even with the greatness that Lillard has showed us. And I already love the guy, and now he's like my hero. I just don't think they're going to be able to do it against the Lakers for 3 more games.
It'll be. I mean, it was somewhere around the 4 to 5 minute left in the fourth mark where Lakers finally clawed back in. They evened it up, and the refs started calling Laker calls where you're watching it and you're like, man, they're getting some really choice calls right now. Either they're 50-50s or I don't see the foul. And look, that happens. I'm not saying that the NBA is out for the Lakers to win this. I think the NBA would
not so pissed off. He was livid, dude.
Well, it was kind of like with Dwight Howard just fucking with all the other guys, and somehow he's getting the call, and he's like, yeah, hell yeah. And you're like, man, you're the one that's provoking a lot of this. But at that 4 to 5 minute, once they knotted things up, you're like, all right, there was the Blazers had been basically choosing the pace and creating the momentum. And here it finally caught up to them. But CJ was hitting clutch shots late. Dame is just, all right, I am happy to shoot from 36, 38 feet. And he's the most efficient, shooter at that distance in the NBA this season, hands down. So they managed to claw through, but yeah, can they do this over and over and over again? It's wow. That's a large mountain to climb.
You know what it does for me? It makes us fans recalibrate how we feel about rest, though, because it is in the bubble. Like a normal game like that, it was exhausting emotionally and physically for both teams, I'm sure. But now there isn't that plane that you got to get on to go to a city, or there's not going to be after game 2 or 3 where it usually would be. You just go back to your hotel room and you have all this time to recover and not worry about getting to the airport, getting on a plane, being on time, deplaning, all that crap. You just get to go chill in your hotel room. So the rest is better. The recovery is better. I think the shooting is much better because you don't have that weird depth perception thing that does happen occasionally in a packed arena in a big moment. And these guys they're hitting shots that you take in practice, man, especially the Blazers. Like, I am in awe of what Lillard and what McCollum are doing. And Carmelo hasn't really had many great complete games in the bubble, but he does seem to have that Carmelo Anthony scoring knack late in the game when he needed it the most. I would not be shocked at all. As a matter of fact, I'll call it right now. I think that he is going to hit a game-winning shot sometime in this series, and I still think it's going to be Lakers in 6 or 7. But I'm rooting for the Blazers.
I am 100% the same. I got nothing against the Lakers, but the Blazers are a more interesting story. They've basically been in the playoffs now for 9 games, having to fight over and over, night in, night out. And, what you brought up earlier of the Bucks kind of, their sense of spirit was kind of lost in these play-in games because they, in essence, had the one wrapped up, and they just needed to win a couple games. And the Lakers were relatively the same. Once they wrapped it up, they took their foot off the throat of all their competitors and whatnot and had a more laissez-faire attitude, whereas the Blazers have been at full tilt now for 2 weeks. And perhaps that's the evidence of game 1, because they've been pushing their adrenal glands nonstop. They're just accustomed to having to squeeze it a little bit more, whereas the Lakers, LeBron is used to it, but AD doesn't really have all that much playoff experience. And you're going to rely on all these other guys that have not gone far outside of Danny Green in the playoffs. Vogel also reduced his rotation down, which was smart, which is what every playoff coach does, but you're not going to get much run out of, other guys deeper down the bench. So if KCP and Caruso and Kuzma and a couple other guys can't step up, I'm not sure where they're going to find the extra offense, night in, night out to make this anything but a 7-game series.
Caruso's interesting because he can be that Nat-like defender occasionally on someone and bother, at least as much as you can bother Lillard or McCollum. But if you're Vogel, you're looking down that bench and you're like, all right, do I give J.R. Smith a shot to light it up for 20 in a game?
Deion Waiters?
Deion Waiters, who can get hot very, very fast. I think the real deciding factor in this series is because you can give the Blazers who are just going to stay white hot. And then you can say the Lakers have a huge offensive and defensive rebounding edge. But can Anthony Davis shed his reputation of not stepping up in the fourth quarter and have some great clutch buckets down the stretch, because we know what LeBron's going to do. We know that there's going to be some games where LeBron decides, I'm just going to put this whole team on my back and score in the final minutes when I need to. But then there's also going to be other games where LeBron is going to become a distributor. And that's worked for him in the past when you have the Danny Greens and the Kuzmas of the world knocking down their shots. But if they're not, like they weren't last night, it's going to go the way of the Blazers. So I think it's going to be a hotly contested series. And if the Blazers are going to run out of gas, they still have won a ton of new fans in the bubble.
Okay, so there were those two games last night, and then the other two games were Heat versus Pacers, and then OKC versus Rockets. Which would you prefer to talk about first?
God, Matt, I'm happy to talk about them. Okay, I'm happy to talk about any of this.
Okay.
The last 2 days, I've loved NBA bubble since it started, and then the playoffs. Even just the play-in game, it like ratcheted up in intensity. And then yesterday and the day before, it was like March Madness. And as a huge college basketball fan in days of yore, I feel like it was better than March Madness because it was the same format with games all day, but we know who every player is and we know their history. And we don't need to do, oh, well, this guy's majoring in mechanical engineering. No, we know who the hell these guys are. And it was a thrill to watch. So I'm going to go to the Thunder Rockets, and you know why I'm going there, because Chris Paul. But I think that what Chris Paul, and I'll give Billy Donovan some credit too, and the rest of that staff, is they have just somehow gotten this team into shape where they have been outplaying expectations all year. And even though the Rockets got the better of them yesterday, I think this is going to be anybody's series. I think this could be a 7-game series, provided everyone stays healthy.
Doing just a quick preview last week of this, I along with guest Mateen Stewart, if you know Mateen, we both took OKC in this just because.
Did you? Okay.
With Westbrook being a big question mark as to when he comes back, so then it becomes the James Harden show. Now, last night, two things went their way. A, they made 7 more threes, which they shot 20 of 52 overall. And I want to say OKC went like 13 of 32, something along those lines. But you know the Rockets are going to do that. But what OKC did, which they don't do, is they had 12 turnovers. They lead the league in fewest turnovers. So they just had a bad, especially in the first half and that first quarter too. They were just turning the ball over left and right. And then on top of that, the Rockets, like Ben McLemore had the best playoff game he's ever had. And they got buckets from guys that I'm not sure that you can rely on getting buckets, especially if Westbrook is going to be out. So those two things ended up being a 15-point win for Houston. But I still think OKC has all the right pieces to make this a legitimate 7-game and to take this from Houston. It just, if Westbrook comes back by game 3 or game 4, and the series is knotted at 2 apiece, or perhaps OKC wins the next 2 and they're up, suddenly that's a completely different series. They get Westbrook back for game 2. All right, well, that's different. But, I don't foresee that happening. Last report I saw, I don't believe he's coming back for game 2, but still. So this one could totally go 7. It just last night, a couple of things, because Houston got out-rebounded, and they actually, OKC shot more free throws, which normally, Harden is good for 12 to 15, although in the playoffs it drops a little bit. But OKC won on certain regards, but they just shot a little bit worse overall. They hit fewer threes, and OKC just turned the ball over too many times. I was
impressed with Harden's game, and because Harden had a hand in some of those turnovers. And it's, if in comic speak, it'd be like, I guess making fun of James Harden's defense is like us going on stage and doing 10 minutes on airplane food, but his defense has improved. And you look at him in his body, he's as thick as he's ever been. And I think that he can be a little bit of a disruptor defensively, just because you're not expecting him to do that. But I still think Chris Paul can get in his head more so than vice versa. The issue you're going to have is when Russell Westbrook comes back, because then Harden has his go-to guy. And that's why I was so surprised that the Rockets took the game, because I thought with Russell Westbrook on the sideline, James Harden given his sometimes disappearing in playoff history, and Chris Paul just wanting to set him on fire, I thought that would be enough. And so I could be wrong. I mean, this could be the Rockets just haven't showed us their whole deck yet, and they're ready to run right through these playoffs. I just don't think that that's going to be the scenario. So I'm going to stick with my 7-game approach, but we could watch game 2 of that. And if the Rockets still look good without Russell Westbrook, different story.
True. Very true. I can't foresee the Rockets making a deep playoff push when they are going to get out-rebounded by every team they're going to come across. So they got to make it up doing what they do, which is volume three-point shooting. And if they shoot below 36 or so % as a team, then they have no chance of winning any of these games. Now they're going to hoist 50 guaranteed three-pointers a game. That is the goal. That is the offense as it's designed. But, if you're only going to make 16 of those 50, well, that's 34 misses that now you have to account for and make up for elsewhere. And if you're going to lose on the rebounding game, then you need to be forcing turnovers left and right and winning the free throw battle and win. It's going to be difficult for them, but they could. If they win game 2, just like you said, without Westbrook, then there's no need to push him to get him back, even though it's Westbrook and he's going to be pushing to get back as soon as he possibly can. There's no sense of urgency at that point if they're up 2-0, unless it ends up OKC takes the next 3 and just like, oh shit, well, now we're in a do or die situation, but cross that bridge when you get to it. But I expected that game to be much tighter, and just Houston, held serve the whole game. It was theirs to lose the entire game. What it did though, going back to college basketball just for a sec, is that yesterday highlighted why March Madness and having a team that's even a huge favorite is so precarious in that format, because it is one and done. And I think a lot of these series that we're watching are going to be back and forth, but all you have to do in a one and done setting is just get a big lead early, and then you just coast. And that's what we saw a couple teams be able to pull out yesterday. And it doesn't matter who's on the front of the jersey. It's like, it's one game. And at least here, I think we're going to see the series balance out. And so hopefully we get a lot of game 6s and game 7s. I certainly think we're going to 7 games with Indiana and Miami. I think that's going to be a fun series to watch. The only thing about that is that I feel like the Jimmy Butler, TJ Warren thing is going to continue to be overblown and overhyped. And I don't think anything's ever going to actually happen as a result of it. Maybe Jimmy Butler wanted to get in his head a little bit yesterday, but it's tough to get in Warren's head. Like, he's just kind of become a stone cold assassin, very quiet guy. I don't think you're going to affect him mentally. So I think they're going to continue to push that storyline on us, and I don't think it's going to matter. Well, I mean, I don't see this going 7. I mean, Oladipo went out early because he got poked in the eye. So that changes the complexion of their team, especially when you don't have Sabonis down in the bubble. But they're saying if they make it far enough, maybe Sabonis comes back. Who knows if that's the case? But the problem with TJ Warren is last night he got 8 boards, which is very un-TJ Warren like, and he also had 3 assists, which kind of is un-TJ Warren like, because normally it's 25 points, maybe 2 boards and an assist. So if you're not going to have Depot and he's going to be in and out, he's still not fully Victor Oladipo. Brogdon carried that team for a big chunk of the season. Turner's been playing really well in the bubble thus far, kind of even better than I thought he could play. And then Warren went off, but at the same time, I like the depth of the Heat. I think the Heat have a better sense of who they are. I found it was interesting that Spoelstra, after none starting 59 or 60 games during the regular season, he benched him, and I don't believe he played a single second, and Dragic got the start, and Dragic played great. And you have his steady hand at the point guard. Jimmy Butler is, a certified killer, especially in the playoffs. Loves it. And then if you can get any of the other guys to pile in, I just think that's too much for the Pacers to have to overcome night in, night out. So I would say 5 to 6 games max is where this goes, and the Heat take it.
Yeah, I still have the Heat winning it. But with Spo's playoff experience, coaching, and the Heat, to me, are the closest thing to the Trailblazers in terms of a team buying into what this thing is and realizing that there's an opportunity to shock the world here. Every team by this point, if you're in the bubble, you're in it to win it. And so I don't discredit any team's competitive edge, but it does seem like the Blazers and the Heat are more laser focused than anyone else. And the Jimmy Butler point you make is great, because say we want about the guy, I really enjoy his Mick Ultra commercial, because that's how I pack for road trips. And it's like you just
but somehow you're singing Man Eater. I don't know why.
It's like you're never gonna wear the white Heat uniforms. You're just packing one jersey. Come on, Jimmy. That's Mark Ellis junior year of high school mistake right there. Is you're going on a road trip and you pack the wrong color uniform so you can't play. But it just seems like Jimmy is able to light a fire under that entire team in a lot of the same way that Lillard is able to inspire his troops. So I would keep an eye on both of those teams. And I do agree with you. I think it'll go longer, but you're making a convincing argument that the Heat may just suck it up and say, let's just get done with these idiots early and rest up and hang at the hotel pool.
Well, if you do, like I said with the Lakers earlier, it's like, all right, the LeBron over Dame, sure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. With the Heat versus Pacers, like, okay, Butler over Oladipo, no problem. Bam Adebayo over Miles Turner, no problem. Like that over and over again, like, okay, Malcolm Brogdon is better than anything the Heat are going to have by and large, just because the consistency, and he's been in the league long enough. He knows the defense is better and he can read the plays better. But without Sabonis, and if Oladipo is still not at 100%, I just don't know where they come up with the firepower to hang with, the Heat. And I think the only drawback of the Heat right now is Butler's beard. That is one of the most disgusting mustache beards. Moses and I were texting about it for 20 minutes last night. Like, what is this? I put a tweet out about it, and then he texted me. He's like, dude, this beard is utterly ridiculous. And I'm like, isn't it? It's like the worst of Black Snake Moan.
Hey, it's still a pandemic, Matt. It's still quarantine. So you can still, what Jimmy is doing with his facial hair expression is relating to us, the commoners, who are not in this gorgeous COVID-free bubble where it's wine parties at 5 p.m. and it's golf in the morning. He is letting us know, hey, I'm still with you, and I'm growing out raggedy facial hair because I know everybody else is.
Nice spin. They literally built a barber shop for the players only. You can go there and get a fresh shave or whatever you'd like, a nice trim. And I think what kills me, though, is it's mostly mustache. Like their beard is there because he normally carries some sort of like 5 o'clock kind of shadowish, or sometimes carries a 5 o'clock shadowish. But it's like this weird, it hangs off the lips twice as long as where it is everywhere else, and somehow looks patchy-ish, but it's not. It's just gross.
I got to look at this thing more intently. But on another note, you mentioned the barbershop. We need at least a 10-part documentary on life in the bubble when this is all done. That is something that I will eternally create. I hope that the NBA, and they saw what happened with The Last Dance and how that blew up. I hope that they were savvy enough to have cameras everywhere. Matt, this thing, can you imagine the ratings? People are going crazy over Big Brother in its 22nd season with a bunch of no-names that are snuggling with each other. Can you imagine what we would get if we had that sort of reality TV show access to the bubble? It would be bigger than the finale of MASH every night.
Well, you can get a glimpse of it right now. Matisse Thybulle for the Sixers started a YouTube channel, and he's put out episodes in the bubble. He went from no subscribers before the bubble because he started it right when he got there to now he's got like 500,000. Him and JaVale are putting out little vlogs of what it's like. It's not full on because there's obviously they're editing and whatnot. And Matisse, is really savvy about it. You can tell he was of the YouTube generation. But you can get a glimpse of it. But yeah, I would love nothing more. If I could, like before this all started, and say Dimes, the show could get credentialed, I would have gone down there for the.
I know you would have. I know you would have, and you know that I would have texted you, and I would have been that jealous comic who didn't get booked on a show that you got booked on. And I would have said, "Hey, if you need a +1 or you need anybody to let me roll with you," I would be. You know this about me. I'd be a very clean hotel roommate because let's face it, they're not giving each of us our own room.
Yes, they are. I'm not splitting for 4 months a hotel room with anybody outside of my wife.
We're friends. We've been on the road together. We've done this.
Trust me, I've seen, unless we're getting Dame's presidential suite, we're not splitting a hotel room. It's just not happening. 1 king bed. Look, it's already going to smell bad enough from one person living in a confined space for months on end. Two, it's going to be a little bit much.
I don't even look. Okay, I'll take the wine fridge out. I know you want your space, so I'll take my wine fridge out of your side.
That's the least of our problems. You could have your wine fridge. I think we'd have to both wear charcoal underwear because even if you don't intend on doing it, it's going to happen. And now we're just living in each other's farts. That's just all there is to it.
one of us would just have a bad night and we'd get a hankering for hot wings and we'd go to a strip club to pick them up, and we would be the ones that brought COVID into the bubble.
Okay. Well, first off, the one of us is you, Captain Chili's, because I would prefer something that's, a mom and pop, or it's made specifically for me, not some commercialized, we got these frozen and it's got, wild buffalo sauce. No, thank you.
All right. I was willing to be a good roommate, and now I'm being outed on your show that I'm like the one.
You and Cody might fit well together, just living off Applebee's nonstop 24 hours a day. I think the two of you will be simpatico in that regard.
Yeah, it makes great hotel room leftovers. And the mini bar, you get stuck with a bill because it's your name on dropping dimes.
Well, yeah, exactly. But it's a corporate account, so it's fine.
Yeah.
All right, so then those are the two. So the previous day's games, the games that are technically going on, right now, which if you want a little update,
so Brooklyn Nets playing right now.
The Nets are up on the Raptors by 2, 80-78, with 10 minutes and 15 seconds left in the fourth.
I can put it on the back. You want me to put it on the TV? Is that legal?
I don't. Yeah, I think we might get a copyright strike or something. I don't know that is legal. Do you have the Nets with any kind of shot to win this series whatsoever?
I didn't until I saw how hard they played against Portland last week, because they really came together as a squad. And Karis LeVert, which is a name that I can't decide if it's my favorite name in the NBA or my least favorite. It's going to be one or the other. There's no middle ground with that name. I feel like they can definitely push the Raptors. But the Raptors have just been exceeding expectations all year, coming in with everyone saying that there's no way. Kawhi's gone. That was your whole championship. I really like that squad. And Nick Nurse is obviously just about second to none in terms of coaching. So I think the Raptors are going to prevail. But I'd give the Nets a chance. I think I said Raptors in 6, just because Brooklyn just seems scrappy and LeVert could go off for 1 or 2 games. But I think it's going to be the Raptors. They are a team, and while they lost their MVP of last season, a lot of those players still have championship medal, and I think you saw some of that in Game 1.
Yeah, I agree. This series, I don't think it'll be too difficult for them, even if Brooklyn does put up a fight, which, as you pointed out, they rightly can. I mean, they had no business doubling Dame as soon as he got to half court in that game, other than we want to win. We're here to prove, because a lot of those guys, want to be on the Nets next year once KD and Kyrie, rejoin this team, and they want to be in the championship hunt. So especially Karis could be, I don't see Spencer Dinwiddie staying. So Karis is basically auditioning for a job for next season, and Jarrett Jack and Joe Harris, although I think they'll keep Joe Harris no matter what, because he'll slot nicely with KD and Kyrie, but KD especially, just to sit over there and be like,
he might cost more money, though. I mean, Harris has been – I had no idea who the hell that guy was going into the bubble, and he's made a nice case for himself. He's more than just a shooter.
Yeah, I just think with the decreasing overall salary cap and whatnot, it's going to be – these guys aren't going to get the massive payday like Bertans on Washington was expecting a huge payday as the season was going on. Now – like, he opted out wisely because Washington shouldn't have been invited in the first place, but wanting to preserve his max contract, or not max contract, but the max amount of money he'd be able to get. Just like it's not going to be more than likely what you were anticipating, but he's still going to get top dollar for what his position will, pay it. But I think the Nets could steal a game. 2 might be pushing it for me, but I think they could steal a game.
Yeah, because the Raptors are just that kind of squad where they might have a talent ceiling, but you're never going to catch them off guard. You're never going to catch them napping, and so they're always going to be ready to play. So the Nets just have they had a street ball attitude to them that I had not seen from a Brooklyn Nets team, a New Jersey Nets team, in a long time. And so if they can get the chemistry to gel with Kyrie and KD possibly coming back, that is a team to be feared, with the pieces that those two fellas are going to have around them.
Especially in the East. I mean, they look like, without Kyrie and the way they played in the bubble thus far, they look like what Kenny Atkinson had him playing before they signed Kevin Durant and Kyrie. What made them such, a place that guys were willing to go to and play at. Like, look at this organization. They have their shit together after kind of, screwing the pooch by giving up a ton of assets for an aging Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett. They've righted the ship at this point. But yeah, they've gotten back to, they have no real shot in my eyes, but they're a good team and they're fun to watch. But the Raptors, as you pointed out, Nick Nurse is one of the best coaches. He cemented that status pretty quick. And this year was the test of, okay, you had Kawhi last year, and even when he was out, your team was excellent, but perhaps they had the extra confidence knowing they had Kawhi with them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then this year come out and they haven't missed a beat. They ended up being a better team record-wise than they were last year. And you have to give that up to how well coached and organized they are, because they're getting tremendous run out of guys who are G League cast-offs. And just like Chris Boucher, jump right in, and then we need you for 12 minutes this game, and then you don't play for 3 games, and then you're going to play 26. And they have numerous guys. They've had so much turmoil in the lineup with injuries, so much so that none of their guys that in a normal year were qualified for the 6-man award qualified, because Norman Powell had to start 20 some odd games because they had so many injuries. And they're just a really well-coached team. They're going to be a tough out. If things break right, they could easily be in the championship again.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I think Milwaukee will get it together against the Magic, but I don't think any team is stupid enough to overlook the Raptors going forward in the Eastern Conference Finals. But that Kawhi fella you mentioned is he on a team in the bubble? Is he? Are they in the bubble still? Oh yeah. Yeah.
They are.
They're not bad.
They play later tonight. They got a little help from the refs in their first game by ousting Porzingis for nothing. For
2 nothings.
The first one is one. It's kind of, as much as baseball has unwritten rules and then guys violate the unwritten, all that, gentleman's code bullshit. It is kind of a known thing of, if you do that, you throw your fist pissed off at a call, it's almost a guaranteed tech.
It's because every ref of this generation of refs grew up in their formative years watching John McClain go against guys that look like Porzingis. And so they're just conditioned to think that he probably is going to overtake some sort of Plaza Hotel if we don't keep him in line. And so they have a quicker trigger finger with Porzingis because he looks like he should be in Die Hard.
I'm getting tossed out for standing up for Doncic when Doncic had an altercation with Marcus Morris. Marcus Morris and his brother Markieff are 2 of the most unlikable people in the NBA.
And they
just
both
flat
play
out
for LA teams. And
I know.
It's the one reason why I do want the Lakers and the Clippers to advance to play each other. I want to see brother on brother. If any of those games went to overtime, it should just be a wrestling match between the 2 Morris.
Well, Markieff won't be out there. Marcus will. And that will be
right.
If they're playing heavy minutes for Markieff for the Lakers, then the Lakers, bench is not doing well that game. He's not getting near as much run as his brother. But the Clippers, man, if you were on the fence, they got Marcus Morris, they got Pat Bev, and they got Joakim Noah. Now, as a Bulls fan, I love Joakim, but I understand why he rubs people the wrong way. And Pat Bev, I'm actually a Pat Bev fan. I like his chutzpah. But if you don't like Pat Bev, I fully understand, because the guy can be a gnat and just constantly just buzzing in people's ears just to be annoying. So you add all 3 of those up. Boy, they are a relatively unlikable team with those 3 guys.
But Pat Bev is so smart because he knows exactly the role that he plays. He knows he's there to be an antagonist. He can drain some threes and he can run point, but I love how he will get in the jock of anybody who's on the other team. But then if there's a foul called on him or something like that, he is so nice to the officials. He will run up. He will give them the ball because he knows that pisses the other team off even more, that he's just this nice choir boy when it comes to talking to the ref. But then when it's talking to you, he is a genius when it comes to getting inside the opponent's head, getting inside their jock, guarding them tight. I love a good defensive stopper like that who has attitude, who just has that dog in him. And Patrick Beverley, in addition to having many fine undershirts for sale in his hotel room, is also just one hell of a complimentary player on a championship caliber team.
Yeah, I mean, in that series against Dallas, look, if Porzingis getting tossed aside, say him and Doncic play the entire game, their defense is not good enough to shut anybody down. Now, their offense is best in the league. They have the best offense, so they can score, but you need to win then 126 to 122 every game, because you're not gonna hold somebody to sub 100 points guaranteed. So if you don't get next level production, and look, in that game with Porzingis getting tossed, they still had tons of different guys step up. Tim Hardaway Jr. was hitting shots late. Seth Curry was hitting shots when they needed him to. Dorian Finney-Smith was hitting shots when they needed him to. And Doncic was still finding buckets, getting to the lane. I love it. It's like quick old man game that he has. And it's
a great call.
Yeah, he's not fast. He's not. And that was the knock on him coming in. But at the same time, just like, dude, this guy has all the tools. And now with the leniency with step back and whatnot, it just frees him up for those extra long range shots that he can rainbow in over anybody. So if you can get those dudes to step up around him and Porzingis, they're going to be a tough out, just flat out. Because then you'll get good minutes from Maxi Kleber. You'll get good minutes from Boban when you need them. And then you can get the extra scoring. So, they've got a puncher's chance of winning the series. I still think the Clippers are the odds-on favorite to win the championship, but Dallas has a chance. I mean, this isn't an easy first-round matchup for the Clippers.
No, I think given what we know about the Blazers now, this answer might be a little different, but I think before we saw the Blazers get super hot the last week, I think that this is the team that the Clippers did not want to see in round one, because the Mavs are just so – here's how offensively potent they are, is that they got down bad early to the Clippers, and they came roaring back in less than a quarter to have a sizable lead. I mean, when you have that kind of offensive potency, you can beat anybody, and you can beat anybody multiple times in a series. But I think that that's what's so interesting about this bubble, is that we went into this and we said, okay, well, there's three favorites, right? There's the Bucks, there's the Lakers, and there's the Clippers, and then there's everybody else. And the Lakers lost, the Bucks lost badly, and the Clippers almost had a very easy chance of dropping that game.
They looked beatable.
We have no idea what the hell is going to happen, and that's why I love it, because it does allow those underdog stories to not only, it's cute that the Blazers won a game, or it's adorable that the Mavs hung in there. They could win this whole thing, folks, and they could get rings.
I mean, that would be just mind-blowingly impressive if the Mavs managed to win this whole thing.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen, but their squad, they have some good depth. They have a lot of scores defensively, but we're not talking about them playing in the 80s. We're not talking about
the game has changed.
Yeah, the final's not going to be 75 to 69. It's going to be like what you said, 126, 122. Mavs love that.
But that's what they need every game, and usually the game slows down within the playoffs, and although it's been a fast pace in these opening, first games. Let's see if that bears out ultimately by the close of each playoff series, if it's this fast pace with these high scores. In regards to certain teams, yes, it's always going to be like that. But in others, it's just like, well, the Clippers could enforce a defensive will on this and slow the game down. And now in the half court, their half court sets, they've got more, ability to look. They can go to Kawhi or PG, and they just surround with shooters after that, and then a dump into Zubac or something along those lines. But they've got enough shooters to where their half court should be stable. It'll be interesting, but I still think Clippers take this ultimately. I hope the Mavs make it interesting. I would love to see it go 7.
I think there's just something different about the games in the bubble that lends to a more fast and loose style of play. That defensive intensity is always going to be a factor, especially in the playoffs. But I think less so this year, because I don't know if anybody's talked about this, but there's nobody around the court. There's nobody to fear if you're diving after a loose ball. Yeah. If you're the way that these slashers are attacking the rim is more violent than what you used to see, because they don't have to worry about a photographer or some ball boy just like landing on them and having a Paul George or a Gordon Hayward freak accident. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And so I think that as a result, you're seeing better shooting. You're seeing more aggressive drives to the bucket. And this is that kind of up and down pace that those kind of moves lend itself to.
Yeah, it happened in last night's game with Portland. Gabriel, their young kid, the undrafted out of Kentucky, and he went flying over the out of bounds to save one specific basketball, but you would have gone into the second row easy on that play. And you're thinking about that as you're going for it, as opposed to just focusing on getting it back in, knowing that you're not going to run into anything and you'll be fine. Like in the one, I think it was the Lakers' second game or something, maybe third game. Kuzma made a gorgeous baseline where he jumped out and be like, dude, you would have taken out photographers plus the first couple rounds of spectators, and you don't have to worry about that. Yeah, the lack of fans in there it changes the game ever so slightly, and I can't wait. Hopefully it just leads to an overall better brand of basketball. So yes, it's an augmented version, but the game itself is just as engaging, if not more so, without, it sucks we don't have the fans, especially like on huge plays, just to hear a crowd go crazy. But, I'd rather have basketball than, wait for fans.
I wonder if I could do like a virtual stand-up show, like in the bubble from like half court, and it'd feel like I sold out Madison Square Garden. Like pipe in that crowd noise, give me the fans watching on Zoom, like in their little pockets, and give me like after a good joke, it'll have like the Mark cheerleaders light up for a second.
If you have what the NBA has, and you can cheer from the NBA app, and when they like a joke, they can do a laughing sound so you can get feedback as it's happening. Yeah, it could totally work.
That sounds like a lot of work. I think I'll just stick to doing a hour-long monologue on stage and hoping people like it.
Yeah, have fun with that. I don't know how you do it, but okay. All right, let's switch over. There's two other series we haven't got to, and then we'll close this out.
Yep.
Jazz versus Nuggets. Nuggets took the first one. The Jazz, unfortunately, with no Bogdanovich and Mike Conley leaving for the birth of his child, the Jazz are back to what the Jazz have been, which is if Donovan can't make a play for us late in the game, we have no other offense. He scored the most playoff points by a Jazz player in the history of the Jazz organization. It was at 50 points for Karl Malone, and I think he ended up with 57, but he cleared 50 before regulation ended. But it was flat out just Donovan, please do something. And at least Denver, we got Jokic out there. Murray is still able to make a play. Porter went cold for the first time. He's been awesome in the bubble thus far, but he's also a rook. But they have more scoring options. The Nuggets do, and the Jazz are it's like watching the Jazz from last year and the year before. It's like, Donovan, if you can't get a bucket for us, then we have nobody else to do this, because I don't know, Jordan Clarkson you would hope would help with that, but it seemed to be Donovan and Donovan only late in game on that first one.
Yeah, Clarkson had a couple nice moves in the lane that were impressive to keep them in it, but I don't even think we've seen the best of the Denver Nuggets yet. I think that Jokic is still getting adjusted to his new body, and Jamal Murray is just taking it to another level. I mean, he's elevated his game in a similar way that Dame has elevated his game, where you were already damn good, if not great, and now you're just at this superstar status. So interested to see if Murray can continue that through the series, because he really was, he was a hero in game one. So
yes,
if he can't bring that every night, Jokic is going to have to step up, and I think he will. I think he's good enough to figure this thing out pretty quick now that we're at playoff intensity. I think that he'll rebound fairly quickly from whatever learning curve that he's getting in this bubble. And I think Denver is going to be a fearsome out. And so I think they handle the Jazz. I love Donovan Mitchell, and the 57 was just emblematic of two things. One, you are a great star in this league. And two, Jordan dropped 63 on the Celtics.
Yeah, and still lost.
and didn't matter. So I don't think it's going to matter in this series.
Yeah, as soon as Bogdanovich had surgery and he was going to be out for this, the Jazz, in my opinion, just lost any real shot of being able to do anything in the bubble, because Conley's had an up and down year, but mostly down. So you needed Bogdanovich's extra scoring punch. It's a spot-on assessment of Murray. We need to see if he can continue to do this, but this is part of the trajectory of he gets better every year, and hopefully that evidence, is strong and bears out in the playoffs. And if Murray can continue to play like that, you know exactly what you're going to get from Jokic, and you have other guys pouring around them. Jeremy Grant is going to get you what Jeremy Grant gets you, and Porter, it frees up Porter there, so we don't need him to do, what he's done, and he'll still get those long distance Durant like pull up threes or run the 2-man game with Jokic, which is a thing of beauty. But it frees up everybody else. So if Murray can continue with that confidence and just, you need a step back three, I can give that to you. I can dribble down. I can, drive into the lane and suck defenders in with me and then kick out to an open 3-point shooter. You need that dynamic within the offense if they're going to have a legitimate shot of making some noise in these playoffs. And they could. Look, if they get hot enough, they could be in the Western Conference Finals. It's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to throw some kinesiology terms at you. My adductors and my abductors hurt watching Porter jack a 3 because his legs just fan out like he's doing jumping jacks. And it just looks like this weird aerobic exercise that Jane Fonda would have taught us in the early 80s. And like, I don't know how he does that, but it's nothing I would ever want to try on a court, but it gets the ball in the hoop. So I think the Nuggets have something special here. And the reason why I say that is because a lot like prospecting for gold nuggets, I don't think we've seen the best of them yet. I think that their ceiling has not revealed itself. Some of these other teams, as much as we're going to be cheering for the Blazers, we've seen what that ceiling looks like. The Nuggets are still figuring that out.
Yeah, we don't know 100% what we're going to get from them, but it is intriguing. And the Jazz is it's a solid first round matchup for them, but they should win this series in 5-6. I think. But
Donovan's going after. I'm telling you this: somebody's breaking that Jordan 63 number, and I think Donovan's a prime candidate. I think he might just look at a game, and be like, I know I'm the only option that we have to score, and especially if they get down like 3 games to nothing, just break Jordan's record and get your name in the all-time books.
Hey, good. I think Dame is your best bet on that. Dame or Harden, one of those.
I think in the playoffs, I think Dame is going to be too focused on distributing, getting his other teammates involved until it becomes Dame time, because he didn't score in the second half until halfway through the fourth quarter. So I don't think he cares about it as much as someone like Donovan Mitchell, who was like the only threat really to score at that volume, because CJ could go off, Carmelo could go off, Grant could go off. There's a lot of names for the Blazers that could have a big night, not as big a night as what Mitchell had the other day, but I think Mitchell or even Jamal Murray, because Jamal Murray was like scintillating. He was like Matt Knost at Highland and Willoughby in 2011, just draining deep shots left. And it was like Matt Knost and JTE had a kid, and it was just draining everything he looked at.
It's a thing of beauty. It's a thing of beauty. Yeah, but I mean, I'm assuming you take Denver in this?
I think I'm in 5 games. Yeah, I think I gave the Jazz 1 game, but I got Denver advancing pretty handily.
And then to close out is the 2 teams that have met each other more than any 2 teams in the playoffs, the Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers. And that first game was it was a good game. I enjoyed watching it thoroughly, but I just don't think that Philly has – I don't know that they have a real shot in this, even though defensively they should be able to, with all the length that they've got. But losing Simmons, it's a hell of a defender. Can Thibault make up for that? And then Boston, if you can get solid production. Now, Gordon Hayward is now going to be out for 4 weeks with a grade 3 ankle sprain.
And then he might be out after that because he might have to go to his own kid being born, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and that's not until middle of September, I think it is. But still, though, 4 weeks from now is the middle of September. So, and then he'd have to quarantine when he got back. He'll be tested every day he's gone. But still, though, we're talking an additional 5-6 days, even if he comes back healthy at that point. So, in essence, you have to assume we're not going to have Hayward back until the tail end of this entire run.
Mm-hmm.
But you still have Tatum, Brown, Kemba, Marcus Smart, Theus. I like, he, as much as Celtics fans complain he never gets a call, he really doesn't ever get a call. The more Celtics games I watch, man, they are not wrong on that. He gets dinged for fouls where, like, I don't even understand. Like, I have no rooting interest in this, and I agree with him being upset right now. But Philly, it just, can you get 4 to 5 back-to-back-to-back excellent games from Embiid in a playoff atmosphere? I have no idea, and that's the biggest problem with Philly.
Not if he doesn't get more help from his teammates, because Embiid played his heart out in game 1, and he looked emotionally spent towards the end of that game. Like he just had nothing left in the tank. And if that is how Joel Embiid is going to be down the stretch in the fourth quarter, you have no shot. I thought it was going to be Celtics in 6, and I might even say now I think the Sixers might be lucky to get a game just because Kemba Walker looked healthier than I thought he would, just given all these reports. I think Kemba, to me, looks 100%. I mean, he was like Kemba back when he was running UConn through March Madness to a championship. Like, if he can get back to peak Kemba, like what I think we're going to get. You mentioned Tatum and Brown, and just so many complementary pieces there that can all become the star of the night. And as I say that, Bryce Wong wants Philly in 7. I'm sorry, Bryce. I wanted to see a 7-game series between, as Matt said, these two great legacy teams that have met more than anyone else in the playoffs. I don't see it. I think they'll be lucky to avoid a sweep.
I know. Watching that game, you're sitting there questioning, who are they going to get the missing points from? Is it going to be Richardson? Is it going to be Shake Milton? Is Horford going to suddenly look like Horford of 2 to 3 years ago?
Horford's good for one throwback game. Come on.
Sure, but you need him to basically be a solid beyond just one game like that. You need 3 to 4 of those if they're going to have a legitimate shot, because as tired as Embiid was at the end of that game, that's going to be every game in the playoffs, man. You need to basically, get yourself ready for the fact that you're going to be mentally and physically exhausted by every one of these. And if you have any championship aspirations, that's not stopping anytime soon.
And it's hard as a team to look at your coach, Brent Brown. He looks like what James Bond would look like in real life if he had his schedule in the movies. Like, he's just out drinking martinis, solving crimes, hooking up with the ladies, showing up to work the next day. And he always looks disheveled. He always looks like he was just hammered until 5 a.m. and he's getting it together. And like, for anybody that wants the James Bond life, that is what you're actually going to look like the next morning. Believe me, because you're talking to two guys who at various points in their life have lived, not the James Bond life, but certainly the alcohol intake of it. And it's not a pretty sight the next day.
I wish I had the digital of Fat Ellis and Matt Knost hanging out at the Improv, and I would put that on screen right now. Beers in our hands, like, hey, no way am I drinking my feelings right now.
No, we were at that perfect chubby peak where you can look at yourself in the mirror, like after you get out of the shower and you're getting ready to go out and do your sets, and you look in the mirror and you say, oh, this is how I stand, and I'll look okay. And you never stand like that. You're just standing, double chin hanging out, sweaty, fat-ass cheeks, just this Eddie giving us another beer for free at the Improv because he feels sorry for us.
I used to wrap my towel very high, like right to my upper chest, so I didn't have to stare at my gut when I got out of the shower. A lot of it, fluffing a shirt out, going, yeah, no, I look thin tonight, and be like, you fucking idiot.
You never look like you do in your bathroom mirror, folks. That is the takeaway from today's Drop and Dime.
That and passport photos. Those are what you genuinely look like at all times.
Well, they tell you that in the passport. They say, hey, don't smile. Like, the whole passport photo thing is rigged to make you look like you're taking the most terroristy picture you can possibly do. Like, they literally ask you to frown. No smiles whatsoever with a passport photo. I don't know why. Every time I show the passport, I smile like, hey, it's me. And I should just be mean mugging them, but I'm not.
Well, it's also like the camera is set up and yet somehow it takes it from a low angle. So you got like a triple chin that doesn't exist and the lighting is terrible. So you look either pasty or like you got rosacea from drinking too long. It's like everything about it just ends up terrible.
Yeah, it's international
just like the
folks.
Sixers' aspirational hopes in this playoffs. It just looks terrible, unfortunately.
Yes, Mike Breen, ladies and gentlemen.
Bang, my friends, bang. Yes, I think we both take the Celtics. At this rate, I would say Celtics in 6. I still think Philly's going to put up a fight, but I don't foresee them getting more than a game to possibly 2 off of them. So out of respect, I'll say Celtics in 6.
I'll give you 5. I'm not going past 5.
Yeah, I don't know. After watching that, look, we got game 2 coming up later this afternoon, so tune in if you want a last-second update. The Raptors have pulled ahead by 6 with 3 minutes left. So there you go. They were down for most of the game. Point here, point there. Not huge, but ultimately the Raptors are probably going to pull this out.
That's what a team with championship experience does. They got those rings weighing down their finger.
You said it. 818 till I die.
Positive push.
Yes. R.I.P. Brody. Your birthday was what, yesterday? 2 days ago?
It was yesterday, and I was doing my my live show on my Patreon, Mark Ellis Live, and I was trying to quote that Brody joke, and I messed it up so quickly.
Which one?
Here, I'll recount the joke for your. It's that I was molested by my uncle as a child. It's okay. They got him. He got 8 years. He should have only gotten 4, but they doubled it because I was molested in a construction zone, which is a great joke. But yesterday when I said it, I said I was molested by my uncle in a construction zone, and then I caught myself. I was like, "Oh God damn it! You just
screwed up the joke from the jump." Yeah, I get BO in the shower. When I was a kid, I had Rogaine chewables.
The comic, more than anyone else, more than the Jim Painters of the world and anyone else you want to throw out there, that everyone would stop what they're doing, comics, and rush in and go watch night after night is Brody Stevens.
Yeah, you didn't get it until you got it type of thing. So you understood why audience members sometimes just scratch their heads watching it going, why is this funny? Which is like, you have to kind of know Brody to understand why this is so funny.
Mm-hmm. Once you get locked in, it's like all these wine drinkers in the NBA. I'm sure a lot of them grew up drinking beer when they were in college or whatever else. But once you get locked into that wine life, you never leave.
That's beautiful. I think you have that Chili's for life and goth tattoo across your chest. All right. Plug Viper Room one last time because I will do it unprofessionally, apparently.
Yeah, I got the TGI Fridays logo above my lower back. Mark Ellis live at the Viper Room, September 5th on the Sunset Strip. You don't have to go. You can watch it from your home. It's a virtual-only show. Going to be headlining a lot of great, funny people opening for me. And you can get pre-sale tickets right now. Why is it a pre-sale? Because you buy the t-shirt, that comes with a ticket for free. And the t-shirt looks a lot like that on the front. Cool Rock Tour logos on the back. And if you remember my Patreon, that link is going to go up today. For everyone else, goes up on Friday. General admission tickets go up next week. Very excited about it. Going to be a lot of fun. I have so much to express to the world, Matt, and now I get to do it without audience interruption. Look out.
Yeah, just pure monologue, baby. Pure monologue. Like, I'm assuming you're going to be hesitating where you assume the laugh is going to be.
A little bit, but I think what you have to do is speed up a little bit.
Yeah, of course.
In between jokes, but there's a lot of new stuff. It's going to be mostly new stuff. And I might even just, because that's the thing with like not having a crowd there, is that in our head, we can kind of go off in tangents and get a little bit further down the rabbit hole. So I'll be able to reel myself back and go into other things I want to do. And I think I'm going to pepper in a couple jokes that I've done, not on my special, but just that I had been working on. So it kind of keeps you in that cadence of
it's a rhythm
how
thing.
the joke structure goes, but it's going to be like the bubble, man. It's going to be fast and loose, and there's no hecklers. There's no mean mugging in the front row. There's no spilled drink in the back. Well, if Josh McCouga, who's going to be hosting with Ken Knapsack, is going to be live there, so he'll probably drop some sort of beverage during my set. But other than that, it's going to be fun, and live Q&A afterwards on stage from the Viper Room. So a whole lot of goodies there. And
I can't wait to see McCouga's COVID-themed suit that he'll be wearing, whatever that is. It's going to be a thing of beauty.
It's probably going to be Steelers colors. I'll tell you that.
All right. Well, there you go. He's already potentially tipped his hand on that, but get those early tickets, get the t-shirt. I'd love to see that on Twitter, put it out there, people. Let's see you in your Mark Ellis at the Viper Room t-shirts.
Do it.
And thank you so much for joining me, Mr. Mark Ellis Live.
Sir, always a pleasure. I miss your ugly face in person, but a virtual embrace to you and yours. And stay safe. Keep doing the show. And if you need me back to correctly comment on the fact that Donovan Mitchell broke Michael Jordan's rookie record and no one else, then I'm happy to come back.
Yeah. If you call that, then if it happens in the next game, you might have to be on one of the next shows after that, because that is amazing. The safe money says Dame or Harden, but you're going out of the box. You're saying after that 57, I believe he can get to 64.
Yeah.
You
Dame
chose Merritt and everybody else is choosing Mantle.
The rest of the Rockets and the Blazers are too good. The Jazz are just going to be, it's going to be like Teen Wolf. It's going to be like Teen Wolf, where the other Jazz are just like eating a sandwich on the court while this one Wolf is just running around, draining threes, dunking all over. Donovan Mitchell's getting it.
I'll believe it when I see it. That's all I'll say. All right. Well, thank you for joining me on today's Dropping Dimes. We hope everybody enjoyed today's show, the NBA Life. Let us know on Twitter at Mark Ellis Live and at Matt Knost. Thoughts on the show, your opinions. If you don't like, basically our prognostications as to how we think these series are going to play out, or our assessment of whatever happened today, we'd love to hear your opinions. And that is it today for me on Dropping Dimes. Thank you so much to everybody that tuned in. Make sure if you enjoy the NBA content, subscribe to the feed of your choice or leave a rating. Either or, I'd appreciate. And that is it this week, or today rather. I will see you guys on Friday. I've got Mark Fernandez coming on. It's at noon, going live again. So hopefully we'll see you guys in the chat. Adios.